Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
I am here with Jaime Casap, who is the Chief Education Evangelist at Google. Jaime evangelizes the potential of digitalization as an enabling capability in pursuit of promoting inquiry-based learning models. He collaborates with school systems, educational organizations, and leaders focused on building innovation in our education policies and practices. It's so nice to have you here, Jaime.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I was excited. I got to see you speak live recently here in Phoenix, and you did such an amazing job. You tied into everything I'm interested in because of my work in curiosity and in education. It's great. So I started to research some of your talks, and I had to laugh because I used to program my homework in BASIC, and some of your talks
right.
of your background of having to write 5,000 lines to get a bird to fly across a Commodore computer, I could relate to.
Right.
But can you give a little background, because it sounds like, of course, that we have some similar things that we have in common in terms of education and technology, but I'd like to have you just give me background before you got to Google and what it's like to work at Google.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So during that presentation, that was only 8 minutes that I had time to speak. So I'm glad that it had made some kind of impact. It's always hard to just speak for 8 minutes. It usually takes me 8 minutes to, introduce myself. So, so I'll give you a quick background. So, I have been at Google now for 14 years. So February, it'll be 14 years. My time at Google, I helped launch Google Apps for Education into the university space when we launched it at ASU, launched Google Apps in the K-12, launched Chromebooks in education. And so I've been part of the education effort at Google for the past 14 years, focused on the role that technology plays in education. My passion for education starts way back. It starts from where I come from. So I'm from Hell's Kitchen, New York, born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, raised by a single mother on welfare and food stamps, and education's the reason I get to talk to you. And so I graduated high school, went to college, graduated from graduate school, and I get to live this life because of education. So as far as I'm concerned, education not only disrupts poverty, education changes families' destinies, right? Because it's not just the students that we deal with. The impact goes on for generations, right? Because I have my kids and now they're doing well. And so that's the impact that education has. And so we should all be interested in education. So that's where I started. I started in Hell's Kitchen, New York. I worked for Governor Cuomo for a couple of years. I was at Accenture for 7 years, working in doing consulting work with strategies around talent management and organizational development. And then I ended up at Google, 14 years ago, and really got to focus on education and what we can do with education, because I think the opportunity is tremendous today.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I saw that you deal with a lot of the types of education that I focus on with soft skills, because you were talking about the importance of collaboration, communication, critical thinking, all the things that we're trying to teach people that I think that got overlooked in the education system. And I think that it's interesting that you're doing that with Google in Arizona. I wasn't aware of that Google had a presence here in that realm. Where is Google in Arizona?
So it's not. So I work from home. So I have a studio in downtown Phoenix. I've been working from home for like 13 years. We used to have an office back in 2006. That's how I started. We were opening up an engineering office. I got recruited. I was working with Google. And then during the big recession in 2008, they closed a bunch of offices. I wouldn't say closed. They combined a bunch of offices. And Phoenix was one of them. So I just stayed with Google. Phoenix is my favorite city in the country. I've lived in many cities, and I've obviously traveled to many others. And Phoenix is my favorite city in the country, and I wanted to stay here. My kids were here, lots of different reasons. And so I just worked from my studio in downtown Phoenix.
Wow, that's great. You have my dream job. But we have a lot of native New Yorkers here in Phoenix. I guess
Yeah.
you're not missing the weather back there right now.
No, I was just there last week. It was cold.
Is it awful? I think I'm going there tomorrow. But you've done a lot of amazing work here in Phoenix. You created the Phoenix Coding Academy, right? Can you talk about that? What is that?
Yeah, so the Phoenix Coding Academy, it started with an idea, and the idea was, how do we create a new type of high school? And so the superintendent, Kent Scribbler at the time, he's now the superintendent in Fort Worth, called me in for a meeting and said, hey, we got a school budget, we got a budget to open up a new school, we want to open up a Google school. And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, we'll use Google Apps, we'll use Chromebooks, we'll paint the walls red, we'll have a creative space. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. This is what we're doing instead. So I pitched him my idea that I've had at that point for a couple of years, which is to build a computer science high school where computer science is the language that students learn across all different subjects. So that's kind of where it started. I joined the implementation team. It was like 10 of us. We worked on this idea and this concept for a couple of years, launched it 4 years ago now. And we got about 400 kids in the school right now who are doing amazing work. And it's focused on computer science, and it's focused on programming, and it's focused on careers. But more importantly, it's focused on, what you call the skills that are most critical, which is, collaboration and problem solving and critical thinking in this kind of computer science world. And this is not a charter school, and there's nothing wrong with charter schools. This is not a private school, and there's nothing wrong with private schools, but this is a regular high school inside the Phoenix Union School District. And part of my personal mission for this school is to prove that you can do a lot of the things that I talk about, a lot of things that those of us in progressive education talk about. We can do these things in our regular course of business in schools. We don't have to go and invent anything new. We can actually, inside our systems, create this.
Well, you write. You had a book actually that tied into what you think should happen in education. You have it's On Our Street, our first talk about poverty. That was a book you co-authored with a psychologist, right?
Yeah.
And I think that what you trying to do in education ties in to a lot of stuff I researched for my book on curiosity, because I was looking at what kept us from being curious, and I found certain 4 factors keep people from being curious, and that was what my assessment measures. But what I was looking at is, why are we not being curious? Because what is it out there that's setting people back? And it made me look at a lot of the TED Talks, like by Sir Ken Robinson and George Land doing his work with NASA, and a lot of them were saying, I mean, we want STEM, of course, we want to have people have certain skills, but they were saying we were educating people out of our creativity because we're focusing so much on science and math and not enough on creativity. What do you say to that?
So I hear both sides of the argument a lot, and I don't think it's one thing or the other. So, for example, I hear people say that we need to teach kids how to be creative. We need to teach kids how to be curious. But the reality is, what we need to do is not kill creativity and curiosity from our kids. Right? So let's start there, right? And I have a 5-year-old, and we are in the middle of. I just got done with a school tour this morning. We're in the middle of picking a kindergarten for her, and we're looking at 5 or 6 different schools, and they have slightly different models. And what we are looking for our child, and every child is different, but what we're looking for our child is a place where she can explore, where she can take that curiosity that she naturally has and grow with it so that she can lead her learning. Mm-hmm. Now, if you start there and she's interested in space, and she is, then, all of a sudden now we're doing math, we're doing space, we're doing engineering, we're doing some of those things. Mm-hmm. But if she was interested in photography, then she would be doing that. Here's the thing about STEM. The thing about STEM is that it's not a separate thing. One of the things that often we deal with students is this idea that they're not good at math. And I think we've failed at separating, or we failed at including math into everything. And what I mean by that is, and this is what I talked to my 5-year-old about, math is everything, right? The whole world is made of math. There's nothing that you look at that doesn't include math, right? It's like
Right.
being inside the matrix. And so when you start with that, then math becomes part of anything, right? So math becomes part of photography, math becomes part of cooking, math becomes part of, whatever, bricklaying, whatever it is that you end up being curious or interested in, math is part of that. Engineering isn't so much about sitting at a computer and programming. Engineering is about taking a problem and then finding solutions for that problem and creating the steps to solve that problem. So it's computational thinking. And computational thinking is in everything: baking, in building a car, in whatever it is that you do. So this idea of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics being the separate thing doesn't make any sense to me, when all those things are involved in whatever problem students are curious in. So I almost want to do the opposite. I want to stop talking about STEM and just, in every subject, include the ideas of science and technology and mathematics and engineering as part of that discussion, because there's no separation between the real world and those subjects.
And you make some really good points, and I'm curious. I love that your daughter's so curious. By the way, I saw she was looking for the best bagel in New York. Did she ever find it? By the way,
no. A couple of months ago, and I just was reminded of this because I told the story this morning at one of the schools that we were visiting. She was playing, doing something. It was bath time, and so I said, "Okay, we got to stop. Got to go take a bath." And she's like, "Aw, why do I have to end?" And I said, all things end. And she said, "Not numbers."
Oh.
And she stumped me, right? So that's the point, is that you can include all this stuff into everything.
Well, but, okay, so it makes sense to do that with kids, but what about the Gen Zers and older who didn't get what your daughter's getting now because they were missing all this, and maybe their curiosity got a little bit hurt, and we're trying to get them more, better with their soft skills. We're trying to make them more creative. What's the solution to all this?
So just as an aside, I say this in my presentation sometimes. If you want to trigger me, call the things that I talk about soft skills. Right?
I know, I saw it.
They're not soft skills. They're absolutely essential and critical, right? So I always when I hear soft skills, that's the first thought I think about, right? So here's the thing. It's a mindset. It's a shift, right? So I've lived I have a YouTube channel that you can go visit with a lot of my videos around career advice and life advice. And I just launched a video this week on this idea of busyness, right? And how we always talk about when someone asks you how you doing, you say busy. And the point of the video was that nobody cares and it's the wrong approach. And so I have all these things out there. One of the things that I talk about in one of my videos is that I've lived my whole life based on what a puppet said in a movie when I was 12 years old. And that was when Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back said to Luke, "Try not." He said, "No, don't try. Do or do not. There is no try." Mm-hmm. Right? And this idea that you're either doing something or not doing something. Now, what does that mean? How does that relate to what we're talking about here? Is that everything is a choice, right? We have to get to a mental place where we realize that everything's a choice. So when an adult says, Generation Z, Generation X, doesn't matter, boomer, whatever you want to call them, when they say, "I'm not very creative," that has to shift to, "I've chosen not to be creative." Because we live in a world now where you can learn how to do anything. And so when I started this YouTube channel, I knew nothing about videography. I'm a photographer by nature. I'm actually technically a professional photographer. I've sold some of my photos, but I knew nothing about videography. Now I can say I'm not very good at videography, or I can say I need to learn how to be good at videography and teach myself. And in the last 9 or 10 months that I've launched this channel, I've learned 2 different software packages. I know everything that you need to know about filters and ND filters and variable filters and what the frame rate should be. I've chosen to learn. And so I think to me, it's a mental state. Yeah. So it's okay that you're not creative. Just either say you've chosen not to be creative, or say, I I'm going to learn how to be creative. I'm going to learn how to do X, because you can learn how to do anything. And to me, that's the opportunity that we have in front of us, is that there is nothing that you can't learn, right? And that the brain is an amazing tool in a sense that you could fill it all day with information and it never gets full. It needs to rest, and then the next day you can wake up and do it all over again. There is no resting point for the brain, and so there's nothing that you can't learn how to do from a mental perspective. Now, if I said I can't dunk a basketball, that's going to be true no matter how hard I learn anything, right? It's just not going to happen. But the stuff that's in your head, everything's a choice, deciding whether you want to be something or not be something.
Yeah, and I think Carol Dweck's work was really important in the open versus fixed, mindset, because I think a lot of it is how we say things and how we visualize what we're capable of or what we're not.
Right.
Yeah, if we close ourselves down, it's really a problem. But I think when you're looking at younger generations, I think it's really fascinating when you talked about how a lot of people, the younger generation, doesn't even know what the world looked like before computers. And I know we talked about this when I was working as the MBA program chair at Forbes, because we would talk about how do we train people for, are they more interested in bits and pieces of content? How can you give them a degree? You're preparing them for a job that may not even exist yet, and you're trying to train them right now. There's a lot of that type of thinking when we get into education, because there's so much that technology ties in. I teach for a technology school here, a couple different schools in town, and one of them is a technology-based school. And one of the questions they asked in one of the classes is to explain what's technology. I mean, what isn't technology? You know what I mean? Is it probably easier to answer? I don't know.
Right.
So,
it depends on how you define technology, but a car is technology, a pen is technology. You can go all the way back.
Right. So, it's a time that we've got generations learning different ways, and we got to think of how we're going to teach them. And are we going to be doing more a la carte type of degrees in the future, where you take a class here at this school and a different class there? Or are we not going to have degrees? Are we going to have certifications? What do you see the future of education in the next few years? Higher ed.
Yeah, so part of it is having a consistent lifelong learning mindset, right? Having that model that you are always learning, always need to be learning. And it doesn't mean a certificate or a program or a degree, right? So I took the winter break. I take a month off in December. And during that time, I learned how to run Final Cut Pro, right? Which is a software package for me to edit video. Do I know how to do it? Well, you watch my videos to see if I did it well. There is no certification. There's no badge. There's no nothing. I just know how to do it. You just watch the video, and if I did it, and I can watch my video and say, well, I can do better than that, and I can grow. And then you can see the progression of my videos on my YouTube channel over time, because I'm getting better at it, right? So you can see that. I think it's more about experimenting with learning, but at the same time experiencing it as well. So it's not just sitting there and listening so that you have 180 credit hours or whatever, and at the end of it, someone can give you a certificate that says you know how to do X. So that's part of it. The other part is, and I talk to a lot of chamber business groups. I talk to a lot of chamber of commerces across the country, and one of the things that I'm trying to warn them about, especially those that are Generation X and boomers, is this idea that the model doesn't exist anymore, right? This model that education is about preparing kids or students with the skills that they need for the jobs that they're going to have, and you're the workforce, and they're going to come in, and you hope they have the skills. That world doesn't exist anymore. Two things. Number one, 70% of Generation Z, right? So those are the kids that are between the ages of 8 and 18, right? Born around the year 2000. That's just kind of a model that I use. Those students do not want to work for you at all. 70% of them want to do their own thing, right? And so even if that was true when I was a 17-year-old, it was harder for me to start my own business. It was harder for me to get myself going because I needed inventory, a storefront, a cash register, employees, all these things that I needed. Today, any student with a laptop can start a business. We live in a long tail economy. So what I talk to students about isn't these are the skills you need for a job. I talk to them about go build your own thing, go create your own brand, go create your own identity of the skills that you have. And those skills might fit in a company, it might fit in a nonprofit, or it might fit as you starting your own thing. That's the world we live in now, which is you can create a niche of anything, and you could literally go garage sailing this weekend in Phoenix, and if you start developing the eye for as you find things, you clean them up, you paint them, you do whatever, and then you put them on eBay and sell them for a 20% profit margin and make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 just from buying and reselling things on eBay. You could create, if you're a designer, you can be on Fiverr and design logos and t-shirts or whatever for people. If you could create your own t-shirt brand with your own sayings, there's just, we live in that world now. And so this, and so this idea that the workforce is waiting for these folks to be educated so that they can come work for you, that world doesn't exist anymore.
You know, I agree that it's definitely changing, but then a lot of people say, what's the value of an education? Well, to some organizations, I mean, I was a pharmaceutical rep forever in the past. They wouldn't even look at you, without a degree. And there's some Gen X and older that have that who still have that same mindset that, there's a certain value that's the value is to them sometimes more than it is to the individual. So how long far out in the future do you see that's still going to be around for some amount of time in certain industries, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, it's going to, I have two kids. I have three kids. I was going to say I have two of them in the college experience. I have one of them with a degree, and she is an editor at CNN. Wow. She makes fake news. And I have and I have an 18-year-old right now who's at ASU in the middle of it. Now, my 27-year-old has a degree in film production that she graduated 4 years ago. She just got promoted, but she didn't get promoted because she has a degree. Right. She got promoted because she's good at what she does. And she continues to educate herself, and she continues to learn, and she continues to get better. And so I totally get it's a supply chain issue right now, right? So Google doesn't require a college degree to work at Google. It just so happens that everyone who graduates from Harvard and Stanford and Princeton want to work at Google, so they have degrees. But you don't need a degree to work at Google, and I think you're going to see more of that where it's the skills that you're bringing. Where imagine a company can do an assessment, where a company, you come in for an interview and they can assess you, they can determine your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities, and your potential, and they have a score for that. And it doesn't matter where you went to college, and it doesn't matter what score you got, and it doesn't matter what degree you have. It's how many people do you know, especially boomers and Generation Xers, who are working in spaces that have nothing to do with what they got a degree in, right? So that's, yeah, exactly. So that's the world that I see, where you have we have people continuously educating themselves, continuously learning, and then being able to prove that. One of the things that on my project list that I'm trying to build right now is what does a future resume look like? And I think the resume should be dead. The resume is it's the past, right? It's a history book. The resume is a history book. What does a resume look like for potential, right? So it shouldn't be stock market-ish, right? Like if I hire you to come work for me, I shouldn't look at your past performance to determine your future results. I want to know what your potential is. What are you bringing me? And so what's that look like, right? So yeah, you're right. Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I have amazing collaboration skills. Okay, how did you determine that, and what could you do with that? I have, a lot of the times what you're bringing in an organization might be your network, right? You might, if I left Google and was out in the world, my network, education network is tremendous. Who can tap into that? Who can utilize that, right? So it's beyond just your degree. It's about what you're bringing to the table. So what's your potential resume look like? or what is your, this is what I think I could bring to your company.
Right.
One of the, when I look at resumes, the first thing, if the first thing on a resume is the highlight or the objectives, and it says looking to work at a company where I can build my skills, I instantly delete. I don't care what you want. Yeah. What are you bringing me?
Right. And well, I think resumes for me, I'm much more attracted to the ones that have bulleted points of I increased sales by XYZ amount in this job. Actual things that you did for the company. Does that appeal to you?
But what is that? How does that mean? Does that guarantee that you're going to do it? Yeah. You're going to do it again? Mm-hmm. Does that guarantee?
Well, it's better than not having something like that. And I mean, in some respects, you know what I mean? I think it's really hard since you say it's hard to quantify it. Until we can quantify it, at least you have something. And I started to put portfolio into the courses I taught, so people could showcase some of the look at this video. I was able to create this great video or this kind of thing, so you can see what they do. Does that appeal to you?
Yeah, so to take the sales thing again, right? So if someone says, I sold X number of things and this made this much revenue, and they come to my organization and they say, I'm looking for a sales job, then yeah, I want to see kind of what you've done in the past, but more importantly, I want to see what potential you have. What is it that, not just what you've done, okay, I'm a sales rep. I sold rotary phones. Right, I sold thousands and thousands of rotary phones. Uh-huh. I made the rotary phone company $8 million. Right. What does that mean for my company? Uh-huh. Right. What is so I want to know what your potential is, what you can bring. To me, you might be really good at teaching people how to sell things, or you might be very good with the network that you have. Right. So for me, one of the bullet points that I've never seen on a resume is, I manage my personal network and I've had outstanding endorsements. Right? Uh-huh. That's interesting to me. That's what I want to see. So I think it matters, again, shifting the thought from what you've done in the past to what you can do in the future. I want people who are adaptable. I want people who who always want to learn something, right? I want people that curiosity thing, right? So that's what I'm looking for. And so how do you quantify it? So that's what I'm trying to figure out now.
Well, it's tough, and I tried to quantify what kept people from being curious. And that was very challenging, but I finally did. I found out that there was 4 things that kept people. And so I thought once you could find these 4 things, which were fear, assumptions, the voice in your head, technology, and environment, you could start to plan to help build, curiosity in people. And I think that for me, what I look for in an interview is, are they asking questions? Are they noticing things? Or do they know about my products? I mean, how important is it to you when you're interviewing someone, the questions they're asking?
Yeah, the questions that they're asking is important, but also the how much they know about what I do, right? And how much they know about my business, how much they know about. So I'll ask questions around things that aren't on the top 3 things that you know about, right? So I think it's important to see how much research they do, how curious they are about your organization, or is it just another interview that they're doing? So all those things matter. And at the same time, I don't think we do a really good job with probation periods, right? Like, yeah, come in. What is the first 6 months of your time here look like? What does the first year look like, right? So being able to do that, right? So if you look, we both live in Phoenix, look at Arizona State University, right? One of the brilliances of Michael Crow and his New American University kind of standard is, why should we restrict people from getting a higher education when he believes anyone can learn? And if that's true, they should come to your school, and if they can't learn something, it's your fault, right? You're doing something wrong. You're not giving them the skills that they need, or you need to do more remedial things, right? Like, so it's almost the same thing is almost true in work. If you hire someone and you have to fire them, it's your fault. It's not their fault. You did something wrong, either in the recruitment process, in the hiring process, in the learning and development process, in whatever it is, right? Most people leave their jobs because they don't like their manager, not because they can't do a skill.
Right.
So those things are important to think about as well.
Well, and as we're preparing people for the future, you say that we're no longer preparing kids for this world because jobs require higher sets of skills. And so you're talking about the language or digitalization is, what we need to be talking about. In computer science, we need to just have a better understanding of the language of computer science, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So how do we get that understanding?
So it's the whole point of that is this idea that we often look at, we all learned English, right?
Okay.
Well, most of us did. We all learned English. It didn't mean that we were all going to go be novelists. Mm-hmm. It meant that we needed to know English to survive and thrive in the worlds that we were in. No matter what you do, you need to know English. What I'm arguing is that the same is true for computer science today. That when you break down machine learning, artificial intelligence, your laptop, your phone, Wi-Fi, whatever it is that you want to break down, it all boils down to the ones and zeros of computer science. And you have to know how those things are stacked. You have to know how they work. You have to know how they integrate with each other. How are you going to, here's an example. If I needed to get from downtown Phoenix to Paradise Valley,
okay,
and I didn't know that cars existed, what solution could I come up with? Right? Mm-hmm. So for me, understanding computer science is understanding that they're cars, and this is what cars can do, and this is the ability that they have, and we can do them. So it's more about understanding the tool set that you have available to you, so that you can do amazing things. And we're at the very, very beginning of this, right? So Google announced a couple weeks ago a breakthrough in quantum computing, and I'm not going to get into quantum computing here, but it's enough to say that they were able to get to an equation or a calculation that would take the world's strongest supercomputer 10,000 hours to figure out. This breakthrough that they have, now they can do it in 300 seconds, right? Like, what are the possibilities of that? What is that going to look like? Now we're talking Star Trek stuff here, right? So understanding computer science, to me, is the same thing as understanding what English is and how it works, so that you can form a story or you can form solutions. It's, if we need problem solving, then you're going to need to know how to use the tools that are available to you.
Well, you have quoted the Stanford study that talks about 82% of elementary school studied, I guess, couldn't tell the difference between a sponsored site and a real news site. So we have a lot of people that want to learn, I should say, and they don't know if they're learning from a reputable site. They don't know where do you learn all this? I mean, what do you rely on if you really haven't learned great critical thinking skills and you're an adult and you want to understand computer science and you don't maybe want to get a degree, but you want to catch up?
Right. Well, there's two different things that you're talking about here. Number one is the computer science is, as a subject, involves things like computational thinking, mm-hmm. and problem solving and, design principles and those things. And those things you can learn. There's lots of reputable computer science types of programs, including Khan Academy, where my kid learned how to code by going through Khan Academy, right? So there are those things that you can do. The other thing that you're talking about are digital skills. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, remember when I was in school, when I was in high school, I learned how to cite things, right? I learned how to reference and cite things and how to put them and all those things. Our students need to do the same thing with technology, right? With the information that they vet. How do they make sense of the information? What is, propaganda? Mm-hmm. Propaganda is not a new subject. It's just easier. And so what we need to do is make sure our students are developing the critical skills and digital skills to be able to vet through information and make sense of information. So to me, those are two different subjects. One is the access to information and what's out there and how do you know something's real or not. And then you have the actual computer science skills that students should know how to do no matter what they decide to do with their careers.
Well, you could learn just about anything you want to learn if you Google it. You go on YouTube, you go, anything you want to learn. It's just information overload is the problem. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
How do people, are you guys dealing with that at Google? I mean, how do we handle all this content? I mean, it's not the Matrix where you can put a little thing in your head and you're good to go. You know, it's time consuming. Is there a more efficient way that we're working on to get this information?
Yeah, I think that, there's teams at Google and Microsoft and Apple and lots of places and Amazon that are trying to figure out how to do that, right? How do you take the information and make sense of it? And I think that everyone has their different approach to doing that. But as you as a person, so for example, videography and learning how to shoot film, I can learn through YouTube. And what I had set up for me for my criteria is when I have a question, let's say, how to use an ND filter. I will put that search in YouTube, and what I will do is I will sort the response. I'll sort the results by views, because what that tells me is I use a wisdom of crowds approach, which is this video has 10 million views. That's telling me that the video that has 10 million views right now might be better than the video that only has 1,000 views if they're the same. Right. And so that's factor number one. Factor number two is when I start watching the video, the way the person explains it to me, I have to be able to make sense of it. And if they do a very good job, then I can stick with that person, and they probably have other content that I can learn from. So through this process over the last 10 months, I have 5 or 6 people that I learn from on YouTube, and it's a great win-win, right? I watch their videos, they get paid for posting those videos, and everybody wins. And because their content is good, more people watch it. And so the wisdom of crowds is really important for me as a criteria that I use for finding good information. But that's just one factor. If there's one person who might teach me, or whose videos I watch, who doesn't make any sense to me, even if they have 10 million views, I won't watch that. So I'm looking for people who can talk to me at the level that I'm at, and that have a wisdom of crowds kind of results to them as well.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see what Google and all the other companies do to make this more efficient process. And I know you speak all the time. You represent Google. Was it through Google that you spoke at the White House with the Obamas? I laughed, by the way, at your comment about you wanted to say Baba Booey into the microphone.
Yeah.
Howard must have appreciated that. But was that part of Google?
Yeah, so I live in this weird world where I do a lot of things for Google, but I'm also my own thing, and so it's funny, right? So Google doesn't own my background, and so Michelle Obama, through different contacts, reached out to me because she wanted me to speak to 200 students that were growing up the way I grew up, right? That was the criteria. These are students who are juniors and seniors in high school who are very talented, very good, but might be living under conditions that were very similar to the way I grew up. And so she asked me to come speak at this event. So it's this weird balance between, yes, I work for Google, but they don't own my background and where I come from. That's why I was asked. So it's most of the time I'm speaking not because I'm representing Google, but because I'm representing my ideas, and I just happen to work at Google, right? So it's this weird balance.
So with Google, though, you're working with the school systems and educational organizations. So what's your focus right now?
So my work at Google is mostly to work with the team, right? So internally, we have teams that are set up to work with school districts, that are set up to work with universities. And so these teams use me as a subject matter expert and bring me to meetings, or there might be an event. They're working with the superintendent of New York City Public Schools, and they're hosting an event to talk about the future of digitalization. So my team will ask me to come speak at that event, or there's a meeting where people want to learn more about the future of work, and so they'll bring me to that meeting. So that's how I work more directly with organizations, is through my team. At the same time, I personally like being involved in specific projects that I'm passionate about. So the Phoenix Coding Academy is a great example. It has nothing to do with Google. Mm-hmm. Google never dropped a dime on that. It's my time, my effort, and that I bring to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you guest lecture at ASU too, Arizona State University, where I graduated.
Yeah.
What kind of classes do you lecture in?
So for a while, I was teaching a public policy class in the School of Public Affairs. I was teaching an introduction to organizational concepts for a while, and then I started guest lecturing. And part of my issue, and same thing with the Coding Academy, I was teaching 10th grade communication skills. Mm-hmm. Part of my problem is I travel a lot, and so it's hard for me to be somewhere every Monday or every Thursday for X amount of hours. And so I try to go in and guest lecture different classes. So I'm open for professors who, I had someone from a marketing professor reach out and say, hey, can you come talk to my class? And I'll go and do a guest lecture for them, right? So because I travel so much, it's more about just drop-ins every once in a while when I can.
When we hear Google, things come to mind of what we think it would be like to work there. I think of the Owen Wilson movie with Vince Vaughn, or and they were making kind of references to it. Is that at all close to what it's like?
So Google's like any place I'll tell you this. So I've been there again 14 years, and when I got there, there were like 4,000 people that were working there, and it felt like a startup, right? Uh-huh. It felt like we all went to Disneyland at the same time one year, right? There's this big picture of all of us standing on Main Street in Disneyland.
That's great.
And a lot of the people that I started with and that I got to know and became my mentors have left since then. And it's becoming more of just a regular company. Mm-hmm. But to me, one of the reasons that I'm still there is because we've been, for the most part, pretty good with sticking to our principles that we set even at the beginning. And so it is more about asking questions and never accepting no as an answer and trying different things. And, I think that kind of cultural part of it makes sense to me. So for the most part, Google kind of lets me roam around and, lets me do what I'm interested in doing. So that's a good thing. And so it's this balancing act. But at the same time, if you're just starting at Google, it might feel more like a traditional company. So mm-hmm. It depends on where you come in and when you come in. But in terms of all the perks, they have, micro kitchens, and the lunches and dinners are amazing, right? It's not cafeteria food. It's real, chef food that they have, and dress policies. One of the videos on my YouTube channel that I'm going to be making in the next couple of months is this idea of dress codes, and I believe dress codes are a diversity issue. So I'll get deeper into that in one of my videos. But being able to wear what you want and being able to kind of manage your own time, but it's all wrapped around this very disciplined structure, right? People often think that working at Google or Google in general is this open-ended, creative place where people do whatever they want, and that's just not true, right? We have our yearly objectives. We have every quarter we go in and figure out how we're doing against those. Every organization inside Google does that. Every team does that. Every individual does that. We have a very sophisticated performance review process. We have a very sophisticated recruiting and interview process. Innovation takes discipline. And I haven't seen us have any shortcuts in those spaces, and so that's a good thing.
Well, you're known for giving time to work on pet projects. Was that actually a formal thing? Did you have 10% of your day? I've heard all kinds of mixed ways of stating that. What's the real format for that?
Yeah, so it used to be a thing, a formal thing. It's called 20% time, and every engineer had 20% of their time to work on what they wanted to. Now, it was loose in terms of what does that mean. Does that mean a day a week? Does that mean 4 days a month? Does that mean taking a couple weeks off every year to go focus on something specific? So it depended on the project or the idea or the individual. Mm-hmm. But yes, a number of projects were created from 20% time. And I think that just got built into our everyday. And so it's more like 120% than it is 20%. So you might be interested, and we still have 20% projects. So like, let's say you are a sales guy that sells ads at Google, but you are very passionate about education. You want to be more involved in education. you can look for roles on the education team, or you can look for what we have are 20% projects and jobs that we don't have the bandwidth or the team to do, or the subject matter expertise. And so someone will pick that project up and work on that project in their own time, but as part of the workday, right? So it's more just integrated in what we do. It's more like a cultural element as opposed to a formal program today.
Well, you guys are definitely ahead of the game as far as developing curiosity. I know I've had a lot of people contact me to help their organizations improve their culture in terms of curiosity. And I think a lot of them refer to what Google's done with that project, or whether it was formal or informal, because it does what we're trying to do. We're worried about innovation right now. We're worried about AI changing where people are placed, and wouldn't it be great to put people into jobs that they really love and are engaged with? And to do that, we got to ask questions. We got to explore. So you guys are just way ahead in that respect. And I always wanted to visit Google. My son-in-law works at Apple, and it feels like you're at ASU when I'm at Apple. It's like a campus feeling, and I kind of assumed it'd be something similar there. But it was just so interesting to watch you talk about what you're doing. I know you had so little time, but I could tell that I really wanted to follow up with you, and I'm so glad that you're able to come on the show to explore this in more detail, because you talk about all the things that I'm passionate about, and whether you call them soft skills, I know you don't like that word, but all the skills that I think are so important: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, all these things. I'm with you, and this needs to be a big focus, I think, in education and just in general in our population. And so I love that you're getting that message out, and I think a lot of people will kind of, want to know more. You mentioned you have a YouTube station. You mentioned they can reach you. Can you just tell them how the best way to find you is?
Yeah, so obviously I'm on LinkedIn. It's just my name. And one of the great things about having a unique name is that there's not a lot of Jaime Casaps out there, right? So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter at JCASAP, or just call as soon as possible, which is the way a customer service rep told me one time. So, it's at JCASAP, and then I'm on YouTube. It's just, youtube.com/Jaime Casap is what it's under. It's a channel. I'm trying to launch a video every week. It's probably closer to 2 a month, but it's this idea of getting some of these ideas out on video format so you can reach more people, and I'm doing that as well.
Well, that's awesome. And if anybody's reading this, it does look like Jaime. It's a Jaime for Jamie.
Yeah, I like to say it's in English it's Jaime Casap. In Spanish it's Jaime Casap.
Right. So I just want to make sure everybody finds you. And Jaime, this was so much fun. I'm so glad you were able to join me on the show. Thank you so much.